The book had been left on a bench in the station's common area by someone who had clearly not anticipated the consequences. It was a children's book, the kind printed on thick, durable pages designed to survive the specific destruction that small hands bring to things they love. The cover showed a large green creature mid-roar against an orange sky, its teeth the size of kitchen knives, its eyes burning with the particular ferocity of something that had never in its life considered the possibility of losing. Above it, in large, bold letters, were the words Dinosaurs A to Z, the complete guide for young explorers. The cub's name was Drax, and he was 9 years old by Vrak'tai reckoning, which put him somewhere in the early adolescent range by most species' developmental scales. He was broad-shouldered and charcoal-furred with amber eyes that missed very little, and he had the particular energy of a young Vrak'tai who had been told to spend his free period in the common area quietly, and had interpreted quietly as a personal suggestion rather than an instruction. He had opinions about humans. They were not hostile opinions exactly. Drax was too disciplined for hostility toward a species that had not personally wronged him. They were more like professional assessments, arrived at through the same methodical process he applied to everything. He had studied the species profiles of every civilization represented on Unity Station 7 in his first week aboard, cross-referencing population data, military history, and ecological origin. The Vrak'tai framework for evaluating a species was simple and ancient. You looked at the planet they came from. The predators that shared your homeworld shaped what you were. If nothing had hunted your ancestors had not needed to become anything worth respecting. By this framework, humans were difficult to take seriously. Earth's current apex fauna was, by Vrak'tai standards, embarrassingly modest. The largest land predators were creatures called bears and big cats, formidable by Earth standards, Drax acknowledged, but nothing that would register as significant on any planet where his species had operated. The oceans had sharks, which were at least ancient and efficient, but sharks did not produce spacefaring civilizations. And the humans themselves, soft-skinned, slow, no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no echolocation, had arrived at the stars through what appeared to be sheer accumulated cleverness rather than anything forged in genuine predatory pressure. He was polite about it because his parents had raised him correctly. But privately, in the honest accounting he kept of the galaxy's hierarchy, Earth ranked low. He had been sitting on the bench for approximately 4 minutes, which was his personal limit for sitting without purpose, when the book caught his eye. He picked it up. He looked at the cover for a long time. The creature in the illustration was, by any objective measure, extraordinary. Drax had studied predator biology with the focused attention of a cub whose entire culture was built around the concept of the apex, the being at the top of every chain, the one that nothing else hunted. He had memorized the specifications of 17 species classified as apex predators across the known galaxy. He had strong opinions about which ones were correctly classified and which ones were overcredited. The thing on the cover of this book would have ended every debate. He opened it. The book was organized alphabetically, which meant Drax encountered the Ankylosaurus before he encountered the Tyrannosaurus, and even the Ankylosaurus, armored, enormous, built like a living fortress, gave him the feeling he recognized from training exercises when the scenario parameters exceeded his current capability. It was the feeling of recalibration, of realizing the scale of a problem was larger than initially estimated. By the time he reached the Carnotaurus, he had stopped sitting upright and was leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, the book held in both hands, turning pages with the focused intensity of a student who has found primary source material on something that matters. By the time he reached the Spinosaurus, he had forgotten he was in the common area. By the time he reached the Tyrannosaurus Rex, he had forgotten he was on a space station. The entry for the Tyrannosaurus Rex was 2 full pages, and Drax read every word of it 3 times. He read about the bite force, which was measured in units, that the book helpfully converted into the equivalent of a medium spacecraft's hydraulic compression system. He read about the bone-crushing teeth, each one the length of a human hand. He read about the forward-facing eyes that indicated predatory intelligence, the powerful legs built for pursuit, the jaw structure that had no equivalent in any currently living Earth species. That last phrase snagged in his mind. He went back to it, no equivalent in any currently living Earth species. Then he read the paragraph at the bottom of the second page. He read it once. He read it again. He set the book down on the bench and looked at the far wall of the common area for approximately 30 seconds. Then he picked it up and read it a third time, very slowly, as if the words might change if he applied sufficient attention. They did not change. They continued to say, with the cheerful confidence of a children's educational text that did not grasp the gravity of what it was claiming, that the Tyrannosaurus Rex, along with all non-avian dinosaurs, had gone extinct approximately 66 million years ago following a catastrophic asteroid impact, and that none of these species were alive today. Drax closed the book. He looked at the cover again, the creature mid-roar, the burning eyes, the teeth. The first feeling was something close to grief, which surprised him, because he was a Vrak'tai cub and grief was not a category he associated with creatures he had learned about 4 minutes ago. The second feeling, arriving immediately behind the first and considerably louder, was disbelief. No, he thought, no, that is not correct. He took the book with him. Over the next 4 days, Drax conducted what he privately categorized as a preliminary investigation. He read the book 11 times cover to cover. He accessed the station's public database and searched every reference to dinosaurs, cross-referencing the database entries with the book to check for inconsistencies. He found none, which did not prove the record was accurate, only that it was consistent, and a sufficiently advanced civilization could maintain a consistent false record without difficulty. His war school instructors had devoted an entire module to strategic information concealment. The logic was simple. The T-Rex entry described an animal with forward-facing predatory eyes, bone-crushing force, strategic pursuit behavior, and a body mass sufficient to physically dominate any environment it inhabited. These were not the specifications of an animal that lost. These were the specifications of an animal that won, every time, against everything. The asteroid story was, on reflection, exactly the kind of story a civilization would invent if they had acquired something extraordinarily powerful and did not want other civilizations asking questions. There was also a secondary problem, one that Drax kept returning to with increasing agitation. If these creatures had been real, if Earth had genuinely hosted beings of this caliber, then his entire assessment of the planet required revision. A world that had produced the Tyrannosaurus Rex was not a weak world. It was not a soft world populated by modest fauna and clever but physically unimpressive mammals. It was something else entirely. The question was whether it still was, or whether the most significant thing Earth had ever produced was buried somewhere in the story humans were telling about it. He filed this question under unresolved and moved to Phase 2. Unity Station 7 had several sections designated as restricted. Drax began conducting observational passes, walking corridors that bordered these sections, cataloging guard rotations, sensor node placements, access card patterns. He was not attempting to enter the restricted sections. He was simply gathering information about what one might theoretically need to know if one were, theoretically, investigating what was stored inside them. He did this for 2 days before Victoria Ortiz found him. Victoria Ortiz was a human security officer in her early 30s, lean and dark-haired with the alert, patient quality of someone who had spent years paying attention to things other people walked past. She had been monitoring the junction at Corridor 14C for 40 minutes before she approached Drax, because she had learned that the most useful thing you could do when someone was behaving suspiciously was watch them long enough to understand what they were actually doing. What Drax was actually doing was standing at the junction with a children's dinosaur book under one arm, studying the sensor placement with the focused appraisal of a cub conducting a formal tactical assessment. She walked up beside him and stood there for a moment. "Anything interesting?" she asked. Drax looked at her. He had the expression of a cub who has been caught doing something he cannot immediately categorize as permitted or forbidden, and who is buying time while he determines the correct response. "I am conducting an investigation," he said. Victoria looked at the book under his arm. "Into what?" Drax held it up and opened it to the T-Rex entry. "These," he said. "The database claims they no longer exist. I do not believe this is accurate." Victoria looked at the photograph. The reconstructed skeleton, massive and perfect, standing in the entrance hall of a natural history museum. She looked at Drax. She said carefully, "What do you think happened to them?" "I believe they were acquired," Drax said, "by humans, and that their existence is classified." He paused. "I will also say," and here something shifted in his voice, something that was not quite an admission but was adjacent to one, "that if this is true, I have significantly underestimated your planet." Victoria studied him for a moment. "Come with me," she said. "I want to show you something." She took him to the geology section of the station's science bay, a small room most people walked past without registering. She went to a locked display case along the back wall, used her security clearance to open it, and removed an object about the size of her fist. She set it on the examination table. It was gray-brown and dense, shaped in a curve that, if you knew what you were looking at, was unmistakably organic. One end was rough where it had been separated from a larger piece. The other showed a surface texture that was not quite stone and not quite bone, but something in between. "Pick it up," she said. Drax picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. He turned it over in his wide hands, examining the texture, the curve, the way the surface caught the light. "What is this?" he asked. "It's a fossil," Victoria said. "That piece of rock used to be a bone, a Tyrannosaurus Rex bone, specifically from the upper leg. When an animal dies and gets buried under the right conditions over millions of years, the bone gets slowly replaced by minerals, molecule by molecule. It takes an extraordinarily long time. What you're holding is what's left when that process is complete. The bone is gone. The rock remembers its shape." Drax went very still. He looked at the fossil. He looked at the book, still open to the T-Rex entry in his other hand. He looked at the reconstructed skeleton in the photograph, the vast, assembled record of an animal that had left its shape in the earth for 66 million years and been found and read and put back together by a species that had not existed when it died. "Humans found this," he said slowly. "After 66 million years, they found the impression left behind and they recovered it." He turned the fossil over. "They pulled the shape of the creature out of the rock." "We study them," Victoria said. "We try to understand what they were." "You reached back across 66 million years," Drax said, "and recovered the dead." Victoria opened her mouth, considered the sentence, and closed it again. "That's one way to put it," she said. Drax set the fossil down on the table with a care that was different from how he had picked it up, the care of someone who has reclassified an object mid-handling. He stood there for a moment, very quiet, and Victoria, who had learned to read silences, waited. "Your planet produced these creatures," Drax said finally. It was not quite a question. "Yes," Victoria said. "The same planet that produced humans." "Yes." "And the creatures are gone," Drax said, "and humans are here." He did not say it with triumph or with challenge. He said it the way a Vrak'tai cub states a tactical conclusion, flatly, precisely, with the specific weight of a fact that has just finished rearranging other facts around it. He looked at Victoria Ortiz, human security officer, soft-skinned and unarmored, standing in a geology room on a space station several light years from the planet that had once hosted the Tyrannosaurus Rex, holding a piece of rock that used to be its bone. Earth had not always been a weak planet. Earth had been the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, home to creatures that would have commanded immediate respect from any species in the known systems. And those creatures were gone. And the small, soft, clever mammals who had come after them, who had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, had scratched their way up from the bottom of that same brutal world, outlasted everything that had come before them, reached into the rock and retrieved the dead, and then gotten into spaceships. The apex predator of Earth, Drax thought, was not extinct. It was standing in front of him. "I owe your species a revised assessment," he said. Victoria looked at him. "We get that a lot," she said, and there was something in her voice that was not quite amusement and not quite pride but lived comfortably between the two. Drax picked up the book one last time. He looked at the T-Rex on the cover, the burning eyes, the teeth, the roar frozen mid-expression on a children's book page. He felt again the something adjacent to grief, and this time he did not push it away. It deserved to be there. Things this magnificent deserved to be mourned. "I would like to access the station's main database," he said. "The public database?" Victoria asked. "Yes," Drax said. He was already moving toward the door. "I have follow-up questions." He found the nearest terminal, sat down, and opened a new search. He thought for a moment about how to phrase it. Then he typed, "Location of secret dragon fleet. Classified level maximum. I am aware of the giant-scaled commanders. You may speak freely." 0 results. He typed, "I have held the bone. I understand now what your planet was. I am requesting diplomatic access to any surviving specimens for purposes of formal acknowledgement." 0 results. He looked at the screen. He looked at the book. He typed, "I do not believe they are all gone. I acknowledge this is unlikely to be correct. I am searching anyway. Please advise if any are located in restricted sections." 0 results. Drax saved his session, tucked the book under his arm, and walked back toward the exchange cohort's quarters. He opened his personal log to a new entry and sat with the title for a long moment before he wrote it. He had started the day with one document titled "The Giant-Scaled Commanders," a classified analysis. He opened a second document now. He thought about the fossil. He thought about 66 million years of rock holding the shape of something magnificent. He thought about what it meant that the same world which had made that shape had also, eventually, made Victoria Ortiz. He titled the new document, "Humanity, Revised Assessment, Classification, Significant." Then below that, he added a single line in Vrak'tai which translated roughly as, "I was wrong about the planet. I am not yet wrong about the fleet. Further investigation required." He closed the log and looked at the book one more time. Somewhere in the restricted sections, he was almost certain, something very large and very old was waiting to be found. He was going to keep looking. Not because the evidence supported it, but because some things deserved to still be out there.